We're prepared. Right. Are we streaming? Yeah. Good evening and welcome to a meeting of the Scrutiny Committee of Melton Borough Council. Members are reminded that we will be using the audio visual system this evening, and the meeting will also be streamed live on YouTube. Members are physically asked to raise their hands in the usual way to indicate they wish to speak and to use their microphones when speaking for the benefit of all present. The microphone is live when the red light displays. Please switch mobile phones to silent. Should you need to leave the room during the meeting, unless it is an emergency evacuation when emergency exit should be used, please use the marked exit and entrance. I will now provide a reminder of the evacuation procedure. In the event of having to evacuate the council chamber, please leave by one of the 6 emergency exits around the sides of the chamber. Please assemble at the far side of the front car park nearest to the park entrance. Officers will be on hand to assist persons who require any assistance. Public recording of the meeting. There is legislation that allows the public to film, record, or use social media at a council meeting. This must not be disruptive to the good order of the meeting, nor include any filming or recording of the public seating area. Alongside myself, Councillor Robert Child, Chair of the Scrutiny Committee, I now turn to members, officers and the guests to introduce themselves. So if we could start with Jacob.
Hi, I'm Councillor Jacob Wilkinson. I'm the Vice Chair of the Scrutiny Committee.
I'm Prue Chandler. I represent Bottisford Ward.
I'm Ziggy Atherton and I represent Icenby. I'm Jean Douglas and I represent Craven Ward.
Hi there, I'm Chris Evans and I represent the Long Clawson Ward.
Margaret Glancy, I represent Newport Ward.
Elaine Holmes and Sybil, and we represent Waltham Ward.
Pam Posnett, I represent Newport Ward on Melton Borough Council, but I'm the Melton East County Councillor. Thank you.
Tim Webster, Dorian Ward.
Amelia Bailey, Neighbourhood Support Officer for Melton Borough Council.
Rachel Parkin, Strategic Lead for Housing Options and Homelessness.
Doug Stother, Tenancy Services Manager.
David Walker, Community Safety Lead.
Aisha Rahman, Leisure Culture and People Manager.
Inspector Madeley Harland, MPA Commander for Melton and Rutland.
Maddie's Graham, Councillor for Wymondham Ward, Portfolio Holder for Communities and Chair of the Melton Safety Community Partnership.
And Michelle Howard, Director for Housing and Communities.
And Adam Green, Senior Demographic Services and Scrutiny Officer.
And I represent the Gadsby Ward, which is 6 villages near Great Dalby. So we'll move to item 1, apologies for absence. We're all here, so there'll be no apologies. Can I just say welcome to the officers who are appearing before scrutiny for the first time. You're very welcome to, and it's good to have you here. So item 2, minutes. I invite a proposer and seconder to confirm the minutes of the scrutiny meeting held on the 25th of July. We'll vote by show of hands.
I'm happy to propose the minutes, Chair.
Margaret Grantley, seconders. Okay. Minutes are approved. I invite members who wish to do so to make declarations of interest in respect of items on the agenda for this meeting. Does anybody wish to declare an interest? No. We'll now move on to item 4, the review of the forward plan. You've been provided with a copy of the forward plan, which shows the key decisions which Cabinet are likely to make over the next 3 months. If anyone wishes to comment, now's the time, please. Nobody wants to comment, Adam. So we might now move on to item 5, review of the scrutiny work programme for the current year. Scrutiny's work programme outlines the areas of work which we are expected to scrutinise during this municipal year. Please note the crime and disorder item on page 23 of your agenda. In addition to tonight's meeting, we have an opportunity for dialogue with the Police and Crime Commissioner for a question and answer session on the 20th of October at 6 p.m. If relevant issues and themes arise from this evening's crime and disorder meeting, then they can be explored further with the PCC at the meeting on the 20th of October, which, if you might wish to make a note, starts at 6 p.m. and is a workshop. Adam Green will send out a calendar invite for the meeting after this meeting and is happy to receive any questions for the PCC in advance of the session. So if we could have a look through the work plan and raise any questions with myself and officers, now is the time. No questions, everybody appears to be happy. Yep. I would now like to invite Michelle Howard, Director for Housing and Communities, the Deputy Chief Executive, to introduce this item. Michelle will introduce the item and lead the presentation, and will bring in some of the officers here tonight when required. There will be opportunities for members to ask questions and make comments at the end of the presentation. Michelle.
Thank you very much. I'm really pleased to be able to bring this to you this evening. And I know it's an area, it's a really broad area. And what we've tried to do collectively is think about those key areas that really matter and areas that you might have picked up on as a committee previously as well. So just in terms of some background and summary, as you'll know, this committee is the council's designated committee for reviewing matters around crime and disorder. And you do that through an annual update to help with the discharge of that responsibility. So really pleased that we've got our police colleagues with us today to help with that, because that collaboration, that partnership is really important to understanding that bigger picture around crime and disorder. In addition, you will have heard Councillor Graham provide some of the updates on the work that we're doing as part of his annual portfolio update. So what we've done is we've pulled out some of those key thematic areas. We have a number of colleagues in the room today. I know there are a lot of officers here, but these guys are the experts in these areas and have done a lot of the work that we'll talk about. So I may bring some of them in as we go through the presentation, but also they are available for your questions at the end. And then, as the chair says, I'm aware that you've got your session with the Police and Crime Commissioner next month, which I hope will also be helpful in adding to this particular agenda item. So we'll test the technology, Adam. It works. So first of all, I thought it was really important to start with what's the picture for Melton. So those key crime trends and things that we're seeing in Melton. And to take us through this, I'm going to hand straight over to Lindsay. Okay.
I probably don't need a mic, to be fair. I've not got a slide with everything on because I literally landed from Mauritius on Sunday. So I've pulled some bits and pieces together for you today. As most of you are aware, I took over for Melton and Rutland in February. So what I've done, I've broken it down and I've sort of given you some crime figures for the last 7 months. And I've compared it with the previous year, which obviously was probably a bit of a freak year with COVID, but I've also brought some figures in from the previous year of 2020, so that we can just see where we're sitting. So we're not just comparing with COVID. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the work that we've done collaboratively, a bit of stuff that what's going on in Melton at the minute. But I'm not going to just talk for talking's sake. You know, I'm here for questions as well. And I've already said to Michelle, and Councillor Graham is already aware that we are in a really good place at the minute in Melton. So, you know, let's go through some bits and pieces. Firstly, some of our priorities that we have as a police at the minute for Melton and Rutland are to focus on county lines. So that's very topical in the news at the minute. We hear a lot about it. It's where, you know, people are targeted, sadly, people who are vulnerable. People may come into their house, take it over and set up a drug line from there, bringing people in from out into different cities. We've had Wolverhampton, we've had Birmingham. They take over the property and then they supply drugs to people that are local from that property. I'll give you some information around what we've done around that in a minute. I'm just going to talk to you about the priorities. We've also got a priority around antisocial behaviour, rural crime and road safety. So that's the sort of topics that I'm going to speak to you about. I think it would only be right for me to mention that obviously everyone will have seen in the press recently around what we've called Op Energy, which is the violent disorder that we've had in East Leicester. And I think if I don't mention it, you know, it would be crazy not to. The impact that we've seen in Melton on the back of that is I have had to provide some officers over to East Leicester. You know, we are seeing unprecedented demand for Leicestershire police. So some officers have gone over there. They've all been put on 12-hour shifts and they have been going over there to assist. However, at the minute, everyone is back in Melton. We're not seeing a mass reduction of my officers. They've just been going over there to support. So I've only got one sergeant that's been seconded over there, and hopefully that'll be for a 4-week period. In relation to that, that is calming down. But we've also got to be mindful that we've got Navaratri, which is obviously a festival in East Leicester, and also Diwali coming up. So we watch that with interest. Some of the work that's been going on with the community safety and Melton Borough Council, I have to say we would not be able to achieve the results that we have achieved without the joint partnership working that we have running. I just want to highlight something as recent as Monday morning, which probably some people aren't aware of in this room. We had on Sunday night a really serious knife crime robbery at Tesco Express, which I'm sure people will have seen in the Melton Times or on the news. It was a really nasty incident. There was a lot of damage, a lot of bottles of alcohol smashed. There was an 18-year-old in the store at the time who was working. It was her second week there. She was really frightened when 2 people came in and basically threatened her with a knife, caused the damage and demanded the cigarettes over the counter. I just want to say that actually by lunchtime on Monday, we had linked in with the housing officer for Melton Borough Council for an area where we'd identified the suspects who were responsible for that from CCTV. The housing officer had met up with us and assisted us in gaining some really key CCTV from the location where they were staying. It enabled us to make a really swift arrest, and that person has been remanded in custody, admitted their part in the offence, and will go to court. So that's all within sort of 24 hours, where just working as partnership really paid off. So I thank everybody for that. Also, just looking at some crime figures, which I think is always good to do. Everyone needs to understand that we are the lowest in the police area. So in the Leicestershire police area, our crime figures are the lowest. Obviously, you know, we do have crime, we do have antisocial behaviour, but it's still one of the safest places to live. And you know, I wouldn't live in Melton and work Melton if that wasn't the case. So that's just a bit of reassurance for all of the councillors, and to share that with the communities that you obviously represent. In the last 7 months, we've seen 2,262 crimes reported. And in the previous 7 months, to go back into COVID time, that was down to 1,908. However, if we go back to the 2020, that was 1,746. So crime is up. I cannot sit here and say that crime is down. However, the reason it is up is to massive changes in how we record crime. We have like real tight crime recording standards. And possibly in previous years, we might have gone to one incident and we would potentially record probably the most significant crime. Now we have to record every single crime that's disclosed to us within that conversation with somebody, even down to harassment, malicious comms, assault. Everything that is disclosed will get recorded. So that is also why our crime has gone up. Just in the last sort of 28 days, to give you a feel for what's going on, we've had 6 burglary others. So they're the ones that are sort of your commercial premises or your shed breaks, your garage breaks. We've had 6, and that's across all the beats within Melton. We normally sit at an average of 8, so that is down. Residential burglaries are sitting at about average, which is 10 in the last 28 days, and it usually does sit around 10. We've had no robberies across the 28 days, apart from obviously that one I've just told you about, which is the knife point robbery. Theft from person, we've had 3. We normally sit at an average of around 2, so we're 1 over. There's no sort of pattern to that. It's just bits and bobs that we've had that people have reported a theft. So maybe in town when they've been out with the nighttime economy, have had the purse stolen in the pub and bits like that. Theft of motor vehicle, that is up by 1. We've had 9. We normally sit at an average of 8. I'll discuss that a little bit in the rural crime. We are seeing a bit of an increase in some of our farms that have been targeted for quad bikes and vehicles that have been left insecure within that farm sort of setup. So that's something that I'll talk to you in a minute about. But on the whole, I think it's really important to share that we judge confidence and satisfaction in the police. And we keep a real close eye on it. And our satisfaction rate as an overall for our policing of the Melton Borough sits at 81.4% for September, which is one of the highest in the force. So, you know, there's always going to be areas that we can improve on. But as a whole, the community have been asked and they're fairly confident in the policing for Melton, which obviously gives me some reassurance. Just to give you a bit of an outline, every Monday we have what's called a threat, risk and harm meeting where we discuss what's happened in the last 7 days. And then we look where I sort of arrange where our demand is and where I'm going to focus, put in my team. So where we are going to support the communities that need it, what's happened and where can I put my resources in. And that happens weekly. So if stuff doesn't get reported, I won't know about it and I won't know where to put my resources. So it's just a little bit of a plea to me for councillors to make sure if things are going on in your communities, please make sure they're reported so we have a clear understanding of what's going on. A couple of other little bits. Sampan, we ran for the antisocial behaviour in the town centre. We worked really closely with the community safety and also Melton Matters. And the absolute results that we had for reducing ASB around the town centre was phenomenal. We couldn't have done it without the support of the community and all our partners. That's something that we know in October sometimes comes back on the radar. McDonald's, the Legion, people come out of the parks and start congregating in the town. So we're already putting plans in place around that. Op Vitality is our response to rural crime locally. So if we start to see an increase in, machine thefts, we have an increase in what we call the cable thefts, which has a massive impact on the rural community because if people lose their Wi-Fi and their telephone communications, has an impact on their business. So that's our response to that. And I basically look on a weekly basis and direct my resources to the locations rurally that they need to be visible. That's supported by our new rural crime team. It is a forced rural crime team, but they'll come and support me if I request them. And I have one of those officers based at Melton who is part of that team. Galileo is our response to hair coursing, which is a separate bit to rural crime. It is under the umbrella of rural crime, but hair coursing is a #1 priority to us as a policing area. And so Galileo is what we use to support that. And, any information that we have around that, it will be a grade 1 response when that comes in to be reported to us. Basically, Op Abattoir was an operation that we ran recently, which was in relation to our county lines. And I just want to give you some figures around that because we had some significant results, which I shared with the local MP fairly recently. We executed 11 warrants, all at 10 different addresses. A total of 11 arrests were made. 2 have been charged and remanded, 5 have been released under investigation, so that's pending some more information, and 3 released on police bail. We believe at the minute that we recovered around a street value of £5,000 worth of drugs, and the amount of cash that we seized was 3,400. We did see some weapons from one address, and we've also put a closure order with the support of Melton Borough Council in place. There were 7 safeguarding referrals made on the back of that, and that is an ongoing operation that we will keep running. In November, we'll be looking at running OPSEPTA, which is the national response to knife crime. Touch wood, I'm pleased to say we don't really have a significant issue around knife crime, but obviously we need to make sure that we're going into the schools and basically giving that education around the dangers of knife crime. Coming to the end of what I'm going to update you about is we're also now looking at our nighttime economy towards Christmas, supporting obviously the light switch on and any other events that are out within our rural communities that need our visible policing response. I hope I've not run over. I don't know how much time you've given me. I can talk forever. So if there's any questions, then fire away at the end. Okay, thank you.
Brill, thank you. And I think it was really important to start with that context. And, you heard a number of times about that collaboration, and that's what I'll come on to next. I think that really is at the heart of what we do, trying to keep our communities safe and the people within. So just want to take you through some of those key partnerships. It's not possible to list all of the range of partnerships that we're involved in. Some are at, individual case level, some might be at sort of particular project level, and there are some that are much bigger, much more strategic. The Safer Melton partnership, you heard Councillor Grain say that is a partnership that he chairs. And there are a number of partners come together in a formal way to make sure that we have a plan for keeping communities safe in Melton. And that means reviewing the evidence and the changes, because things do change and evolve over time as well. If it's okay, I'll just bring Aisha in just to talk members through the priority setting that's been done with members of the Safer Melton partnership recently. Because whilst we've got an overarching strategic plan, it was really important just to review what's happening in Melton right now and to make sure that those emerging priorities really reflect what's happening within the communities. And hopefully you'll see some of what Lindsay has just referred to in here as well, which again shows how partners have been involved in shaping that. But Aisha, if you wouldn't mind just talking through that priority setting process.
Yeah, thank you, Michelle. So yeah, just as Michelle has said, really, whilst we do have a strategic plan that spans over 2 or 3 years that members have at full council approved, we have to constantly review and refresh it. We wouldn't be doing our job right if we didn't do that. So we brought our partners together and looked at a combination of obviously police priorities, our own priorities, but also the priorities of the partnership. We held a workshop with all the partners involved, and within that workshop, along the aims of, we know obviously there are plenty of priorities that we need to work with, but we wanted to come out with 5 solid priorities that we would have a focus on. Given we've come out of a pandemic, we've got cost of living priorities that we need to consider and the impact of that on the communities, and working closely with Lindsay and the other partners, we came out of the workshop with the 5 priorities that we've got on there. It doesn't mean to say that we won't be focusing on others. It just means that it helps us pinpoint our resource to where it's needed the most. But within those priorities, when we deal with them, by its very nature, other issues within the community would also be resolved as well. And what we're going to be doing is bringing the partners back together. Using those priorities, we've created an action plan framework. We'll review it against what's in the strategic plan, look to see where the synergies are with the strategic plan, and if needs be, we will evolve the strategic plan to reflect the current priorities as they are as agreed. And what we are also planning to do is make sure that the partnership have joint ownership of those priorities. So whilst Melton Borough Council leads on and chairs that partnership, it doesn't mean to say that all that responsibility falls on Melton Borough Council alone. So we will be challenging the partners around the table to make sure that they're not just benefiting from the partnership, but also bringing something to the table as well.
Well, thank you. And then, as you'd expect, that partnership will constantly review and discuss those crime trends and what's happening locally, any community tensions and things that are happening to make sure it's relevant. So that plan is really important, and its ability to be dynamic and respond is important. Some of those other partnerships then, I won't go into too much detail, but we have things around specific case management for cases where there is particular community impact or individual impact. So that joint action group is something that works really well. Again, a lot of collaboration between the police and council officers in there. Adults at risk takes more of a safeguarding vulnerable focus approach, so we can really help people who are vulnerable for whatever reason. We've got a range of senior officer groups, county-wide groups that we feed into, and we make sure that then the information is fed back into what we do in Melton, but also that we are contributing and shaping what happens at a county-wide level. And an example of that is the new Domestic Abuse Board, which has established since some new legislation, which I'll talk you through in a few minutes. But Rachel, as our representative on that, will make sure that we are doing what we should be doing so that we are compliant with the new requirements, but also that we're shaping how Leicestershire responds to some of those key changes. And then the final one there, I thought, given the timing of this particular presentation, it was helpful just to show how partnership works in practice for things like the crime and disorder scene in East Leicester over the last few weeks. So we've got our resilience forum. It will stand up and step up for a range of things, be it COVID, the war in Ukraine, but also if there are significant issues anywhere in the county, then those partners can come together to work out how do we respond and how do we best use our resources to really help in the moment. So that was really helpful to be able to have. Some of those other things. So whilst they might not feel immediately relevant to crime and disorder, our housing partnerships are really key. So we have our Chief Housing Officers group that operates again across the whole county. And I just picked out a couple of key programmes of work that group is involved in. The first of those being the development of a protocol so that when people are ready for discharge from prison, that's done in a planned way wherever possible, and that people have housing, because one of the biggest risks to somebody reoffending is if they do not have suitable and secure housing. So that protocol has been in place for a few months now, and then that will really rely on Rachel and Doug's team to work closely to implement it. And then the other thing there is, I don't know if you have heard this through the news, but there is a new prison opening within Leicestershire. HMP Fosway will open in May next year. It's category C prison, and in terms of preparing for that, there is a steering group in place, and we will make sure that we've got an officer represented there just to again help sort of shape that, evolve that as that starts to be implemented. And the provider there has got some particular requirements about ensuring that people have housing for their discharge, because it is so important. But the role of that Chief Housing Officers group in coordinating and really helping to make sure we understand what's happening in our communities is really, really key. Just picking up on our visibility and engagement in our communities, I think I have spoken to you in previous committees about the fact that we do some really good work in Melton and across our partnerships, but we don't always share it, and we don't always share it as visibly as we perhaps should. So I want to share some of the things that we've been doing, but as we come to the Q&A a little bit later, one thing I would ask is that you just give us some really honest feedback about, is the work we're doing reaching our communities in terms of knowledge and awareness, or is there more that we need to do? But a few examples of what we're doing. So led by our police colleagues, there is a Fairmead Partners Group. We know as a council, this is one of our priority neighbourhoods. There's a lot of work happening here, from estate walkabouts to things around engaging young people, which I'll ask Amelia to touch on in a few minutes. But really important that we do what we can to address sort of crime, but also to build that community cohesion and address any tensions. We've had a range of community events, and whilst they might not focus specifically on crime and disorder, the very fact that we can bring communities together and really engage with our communities in a positive way is a means by which we can reduce the risk of crime and disorder in our communities. And there have been a couple of those, and I know some of you might have attended those, such as our Breaking Boundaries event. Yeah, really positive, and we want to make sure that we're doing more of that, and we are communicating more when we do that as well. So we know that actually visibility of what we do is really key. If we're going to give our communities confidence and that they can trust us, that they can trust our partnerships and the things that we do, it's really important that what we do is visible to our communities. These are really emotive issues, and when things go wrong in our communities, we hear about it and the impacts can be felt for quite some time. Some of the issues that Lindsay referred to around last October, really they were felt within our communities, and people will still be anxious about those. So So we know that, and that's something we're very alert to. We've also been reviewing the recent resident survey. We've just had the results back in, so we've been having an initial look at that. And interestingly, one of the things that's emerging is that there perhaps isn't the visibility around the work we're doing. So again, that's why I'm really interested to hear from you a little bit later around that. But we are trying to be more proactive, and I know working with our police colleagues, we will share posts on social media. We will say when we're out and about in communities, and we're finding increasingly that residents are approaching our offices and approaching our police colleagues to talk to us about the things that matter to them, which is really helpful. David, if you don't mind, can I just come to you just to talk through what the month of action is?
Certainly not a problem. So we're looking to run a month of action through October and November of this year. And basically it's going to be broken down into 4 categories. So the first one will be an engagement week where we would look to have a event. I think we're holding it at the John Fernley School, and that'll bring together like a multitude of agencies so people can interact, and hopefully we'll be able to signpost people if they need help, or just give them further information, obviously advertise what we do as a service, so people are aware that, you know, what safer communities actually do within the community. And throughout that week, we'll be going estate walking, knocking on people's doors, informing them again about the event itself, but equally trying to get feedback about what do they see the service doing, what can we do better. So a bit of a like a survey, but a positive survey where we ask them what they actually like about the area. If they could change the area for something for the better, what would that look like, and really getting that information and see what we can do with it. The second week will be an Enviro Crime week of action, where we will target specifically areas that need addressing, because in relation to antisocial behaviour, Enviro Crime plays a part in that. So if the area looks a mess, it often attracts antisocial behaviour with it. So our focus is trying to address them issues and uplift it, and see if we can work with residents to improve the area. Well, that'll include things such as knocking on people's doors again, speaking about if they've got untidy properties containing waste, things of that nature, littering, dog fouling, sort of the key things that residents raise. I know dog fouling is often quite a hot topic, so that's be something we'll try and cover as well, and that obviously comes in with the PSPOs that we're currently out for consultation as well. Then we'll have week 3 that we'll be working in regards to the antisocial behaviour. So we'll be doing high visibility patrols again. We're working alongside the police and other agencies such as housing to conduct property inspections on tenants that might need an extra word of advice in relation to their behaviour, and again raising awareness of our service. And the week 4 would be an environmental / fly tipping sting, where we'd look to go and try and find unscrupulous waste collectors. So we're trawling social media to see if anyone's advertising to collect waste or scrap metal. We've already looking to source a property, so we're going to operate out of there, ask them to come and pick up some waste, and then we're going to do the relevant checks on them to make sure that they've got the relevant licenses. If they haven't, then fixed penalty notices and things of that nature can be issued. So we'll be taking action on that as well. So quite often I get posts from people advertising scrap metal collections that probably aren't registered, so it'd be good to get some of them in. But we'll be working again with the police on that. The actual lead officer for it in my team is Amelia. She's collating everything so far, and like I say, everything seems to be on track, so I'm quite positive. And hopefully if this is a success, this model can then be transferred into different priority areas, and it's something that we can look to run more frequently.
Thank you. So one of the things that we've done over the last few months is take a deliberate step to bring our environmental crime and our antisocial behaviour management together. And that month of action is an example of why that's important and why we feel that that will work and really add some value. In terms of engaging young people, so you've heard us talk a couple of times about the issues that stemmed in October, and particularly around young people, and it really started to help us ask some of those questions around what have young people got to do in Melton? How do we better engage young people and hear their voices and actually empower them within Melton? And so I'm sure all of you will have heard of Amy as a concept and a group and a programme which is really starting to gain momentum. And there's been huge amounts of work from Councillor Mark Frisby and really enabling that as well, along with with Malise. So one thing that we have been doing recently is just start to look at, as Amy moves forward and starts to sort of build a framework as a sort of a partnership or a youth council, which it has aspirations to become, what are those key themes and subjects that Amy might want to focus on as a group of young people? And young people have told us that safer communities is one of those themes, which isn't a surprise. You know, people want to have a voice and they want to help us to really shape policy and shape action in this area. So there will be over the coming months a session for young people to actually talk about safer communities. So what makes a community feel safe? What makes us feel safe in Melton and perhaps not so safe? What are people talking about? How do we stay safe online? And actually, how can we give young people a voice in really helping us to enable safer communities? And one of the things we're keen to make sure is that for them having that discussion, there's a so what attached. There is no point in just having a conversation and not going anywhere. So the commitment we will make is for it to feed directly into the Safer Melton Partnership and help us to really evolve that plan through the lens of young people, as well as the data and the things that we do as partners. So we're really looking forward to taking that forward, and it really feels now that we're gaining some momentum and really adding some value to that. Some of our more operational work with young people, really, I think all credit to Amelia for taking this forward. So, you know, thinking about our priority neighbourhoods and how do we really engage young people and build that trust and confidence. The development of the Fairmead Football League, which started as an idea, something to try, has again really gained some momentum, and there's a lot of passion for developing that further. It's actually something that we have included as a strand of our UK Shared Prosperity Fund plan, just to help with a little bit of funding to keep it going, because for something that can be quite high impact and building that trust and engagement doesn't cost a lot of money. And so it's something that we're trying to think about, how do we make that happen into the longer term? But Amelia, I wonder if you just want to talk us through what happens at the Football League and, you know, and what does it mean in practice?
So originally I came up with the idea to do the Football League after the response to some of the youth ASB that was happening in the town centre. I was thinking, what could we do for those young people to interest them away from the town centre, bring them back into their own communities? So I linked up with the sports team, so the Melton Health and Sports Alliance team, to come up with an idea of what we can do to, keep those young people entertained. So one thing that was quite successful over in Grantham was a football youth league. So I thought, well, that could actually work really well in past drop-in sessions. One of the things that the young people have said is that they're really interested in football, keeping active. So I linked up with some of the local football clubs to see if they could offer some free sessions, some coaching sessions for the young people. And we had some counsellors come down, and it was really great. We had some young people who were able to join clubs from some of the coaches that joined us. And right now we're on a break due to, we always wanted it to become community owned. And one of the things that people in the area from some of our estate walkabouts have said that they want to have some of their own community groups, share their ideas and have some ownership over things. So we've got a survey that will be going out next week to get some feedback of what else they would like in the area. But yeah, it's been really positive. We led that up into the summer, and we're hoping to get it back on into the winter.
Well, thank you, Amelia. Okay, so on to a different subject. So CCTV, again, you'll have heard us touch on this in the portfolio holder update we did earlier this year. And you'll also have seen it, I'm sure, within the budget papers that came through when we set the budgets for this year. The council does have a CCTV system, and we know it's really important in being able to deter, but also to detect and identify offenders where offences have been committed. The council system is over 26 years old, so we know it's an ageing system. We know that it no longer offers an effective or value for money solution, and we know that it needs to be modernised. But what we didn't want to do was just sort of blindly do a like-for-like replacement. We needed to understand actually what is needed, how can we have the best impact, and how do we get the best value for money, and how do we link with our partners to understand what really we need to do. So you will see within the capital programme a line that says, we will be bringing a Bristol business case forward in relation to the replacement of CCTV, so a modernised system, and that is well developed now. So that should be coming through ultimately for council approval later this year. And the team working with partners have really started to look at what are the key things that we want to achieve through having a modernised CCTV system. So, you know, for example, businesses having meaningful engagement to protect their businesses. The police clearly will need access. It's a really important part of, you know, evidence gathering and being able to hold offenders to account. Really important that residents feel safe within our communities, and we know CCTV is a big part of that. Having a safe community enhances our reputation as a community, a place to visit, to support other initiatives like the Pub Watch scheme, and also really help us to increase the visibility and impact of enforcement actions. So a lot of work going on in the background with a view to bringing that forward over the next few months, and that really will build on the success that we've had with the deployment of CCTV cameras that we secured the funding for through the Safer Streets scheme that we've spoken about before. So we're really looking forward to being able to bring something forward for your consideration at council later this year. Moving on to domestic abuse. So I referred earlier to the fact that there was some new legislation that we've needed to respond proactively to. Responding to domestic abuse is not new. It's something that's always been really important to us. It's embedded into our safeguarding approach, but the requirements of us are changing. And it's important that we can demonstrate that we are keeping up with those and that we are really taking that seriously. So you may have heard of the Domestic Abuse Act. It does place additional duties on us and other partners. And we need to work in partnership to make sure that we turn those requirements into action. So there are a number of things there that this council is doing. So, you know, automatic priority need status for anybody that approaches us as telling us that they have experienced domestic abuse. It's really important that we take that seriously and that we risk assess and we support those people. There are new requirements around the way in which we allocate tenancies. And there is a strategy for Leicestershire that we are actively contributing to. And then the other thing, which is something that's quite exciting for us, is something called the Domestic Abuse Housing Alliance Accreditation. So really a standard that a lot of housing associations and housing providers are aspiring to achieve in terms of identifying domestic abuse and then supporting people effectively. So Rachel is our lead on domestic abuse as a thematic lead, but also on DAHA accreditation. And I know she'd be more than happy to take you through our action plan at another time in relation to that. It's something that the County Council is funding for all of the districts to achieve. As something that we've got it's work across a number of teams. So within our tenancy services, within our housing options services, and within our safer communities team as well. So something we'll be taking very seriously and be very proud to achieve. I won't go through these in detail, and you have got some slides in front of you, but there are 5 key strands of Leicestershire's domestic abuse strategy. And what Rachel has done is just set out what we are doing from a Melton Borough Council perspective to respond to that. So you will see more information coming through in relation to this. You'll see more communication in relation to this. And that requirement is obviously really key. An area where we are making some active changes at the moment is around how we manage antisocial behaviour management in our housing services. So again, ASB management in housing isn't new, and we've got some fantastic examples where we do this really well. We've also got some examples where we feel that we could have greater clarity around roles and responsibilities and expectations, certainly for our residents and also for our staff. And you'll have heard us talk through some of the housing work we've done together around the Charter for Social Housing Residents, which places greater emphasis on the importance of us managing antisocial behaviour within our housing. So you'll see there that the quote that comes directly from that guidance. So landlords should tackle antisocial behaviour. We should enable tenants to know who is responsible for action and who can support and assist if they are faced with antisocial behaviour. We don't feel that we have yet given that clarity to our tenants, and that's an area that we are actively seeking to improve. I'm going to hand over to Doug just to take us through those bullet points and the things and the changes that we're going to be making. And Doug has some experience of doing this in a previous role, which is really important for us in terms of learning. So Doug, over to you.
Oh yeah, so I think it's really clear to me from straight away that Melton does tackle its antisocial behaviour within our stock. There's some really good evidence recently now since I've been here that where we are tackling, we're taking kind of proactive and preventative action against our customers where we need to, and also supporting the vulnerable customers we have. but I think it's important to think about kind of where we need to go on our future journey. Our future journey really kind of looks at, we need kind of to underpin our service, we need policy process and systems in place that are going to enable our staff on the ground to be able to deliver better service to our customers. Because what we want to improve is, one of our things that we want to do is improve our customer journey through antisocial behaviour. So I want to be able to offer better solutions for them to be able to report antisocial behaviour to us. So expand, not just picking up the phone to us, can they do it online? And, you know, also being aware of what we will take as antisocial behaviour. So being clear about kind of what is antisocial behaviour, what isn't an antisocial behaviour, what's a breach of tenancy, so that they're aware and we can manage expectations from early doors. So we're not setting ourselves up to fail by being promising too much, but then not being able to deliver it in the long run. So we want to be really kind of clear about making sure that they're aware of that. Also, the process of going through to a court case, because I think that sometimes our customers don't quite understand that we would love to be able to take quick, swift action half the time, but unfortunately we are hamstrung by our court system, which has been hampered by COVID. So there are a lot of waiting delays on those sorts of things. So it's important that we're able to kind of do that as well with our customers to manage it. Then also, you know, one of the big key things is making sure that we're training our staff. So once we've done all of our processes and our policies and got everything in place, that actually we're training our staff and making it clear for where they go and how they do it. So it's really kind of making sure that we're doing all those things to make the journey for our customers who are reporting antisocial behaviour, feeling that we're supporting them, we're behind them, and we're listening to actually what they want. So we're looking to take those sorts of things forwards, and also we'll be taking that out to our Your Choice meetings with our customers as well to get their input, so they can kind of shape our values. Because going forward, the regulator is going to have more of a kind of an overview of what we're going to be doing, and one of the areas is an antisocial behaviour. So the new tenant servicing standards measures essentially came out last week, and 3 are around antisocial behaviour. So one's about how many cases we've got per size that we are. The other ones, I've written them down just so I've remembered, is around about satisfaction, around how we deal with antisocial behaviour. And the other one is how we're making a positive contribution towards our neighbourhood. So it's really important that a lot of that's going to come back in surveys. So we're actually kind of being out there and doing this stuff early doors and kind of supporting our customers.
Thank you, Doug. And one thing that we are acutely aware of is where we have antisocial behaviour issues impacting our residents or our communities, there is a wider ripple, wider community impact, and that can be really damaging for trust and confidence in what we do and as partners. So we know it's important, and I want to reassure the committee that we take that really seriously. You'll be pleased to know that I'm going to stop talking in a minute, and then we can move on to some questions. But I just wanted to talk quickly about our integrated people offer, because it's something that that we committed to within our corporate strategy, but we didn't really define it. So we've been working really hard to try to define, well, what does that mean? What does that look like? If we think about supporting our communities, what are the key strands and things that we need to bring together in order to actually have a better offer for our communities, and an offer that can really respond to some of those challenges and changes that we see, be they cost of living pressures, be they COVID impacts. And we've got some fantastic work happens across this council. We haven't always aligned our functions and service strands in the way that we want to moving forward. So over the last 12 months, we've taken those deliberate steps to bring community safety and environmental crime together, and that is working. We can see that that's paying off, and we want to really build on that and formalise that as part of our revised offer. So we are working hard on making that really visible to you as members, really clear as members, but it will have a so what attached. What can you expect as a member of our community when we say that we want to best support people, make our communities safer, help people to be healthy and active, to connect people, and ultimately to really empower our communities as well. So all of that work will be led by Aisha, with a number of really, really talented and excellent services working with her. So I will stop at that point and move on to any questions that you might have. Just a reminder of the people that you've got here joining you this evening, and hopefully between us we can answer anything that you want to ask us. So thank you very much, Chair.
So members, you've heard a lot of information from the police and the officers. It's time for the questions. Through Councillor Chandler, then Councillor Atherton.
Thank you, Chairman. The majority of what I've heard tonight relates to Melton. Half our population lives in villages. And I'm acutely aware, and Melise knows full well what I'm going to say, I think, that youth provision is right at the bottom of the list. And whilst we're not having crime from our young people. We're having a lot of antisocial behaviour. I mean, I take great exception to setting hedgehogs on fire. I've been aware of 2 instances of this year. And to me, I mean, I might come off a farm and people think farmers are hard, but we're not. We're very sentimental towards animals, and especially things like hedgehogs. They do such a lot of good. And yet they set fire to them and then throw them away just to die. And I mean, that is extreme cruelty. But how are we ever going to get youth services? I mean, I was talking to our county councillor last night. There's no money for youth anymore. Local people have to jump through so many hoops to register as a youth leader, to be with young people. I mean, we've got an acute problem. We've lost the sports hall at the school, as everybody knows. We've got no indoor sports facilities in the winter. We've got an amazing football club that's got 14 teams, and they come from all around the globe to play there. But we've got nothing in the winter months. We're coming into now the darker nights and we've got absolutely nothing, and they just parade around the village. As I say, and I do emphasise this, it's not serious crime, it's petty vandalism, a lot of it. I mean, where do we go with this? I mean, I don't like to keep harping on about it, but it is a very serious problem. And a lot of our children, it's not that they're coming from homes where they haven't got any money. They're given £20 to go to the co-op to get some bottles and cigarettes and things. And that's when it all starts. Sitting in the churchyard, sitting at the station. I mean, you could go to our railway station every night and find a group of youngsters. That's the youth club. We have a youth club, there's 70 on roll, but they can't cope with them. They've got no youth leaders. I mean, it is quite a serious problem, but nobody seems to be able to do anything about it. I bring it up year after year after year, and I'm sorry for that, but it's something
Would you like to respond to that?
I can, thank you, Chair. I completely understand what you're saying. I think one of the priorities that you would have seen on the board as part of the workshops that we ran was rural crime. And I think we got there because when we invited our providers and statutory partners, we also invited the parish council, and I believe Botsford was represented there. I think
isolated. We never get involved in anything. I go to a parish council meeting and I learn, oh, we've had so-and-so down and we've had so-and-so down. But we're never told about this. I mean, it was just the same last night. I sat for 2.5 hours at the parish council last night, learned no end of things, what's been happening with Melton Borough Council, but I didn't know. Nobody had the courtesy to tell me.
I mean, that's something that we can take away. If we feel that obviously the parish council is out of the loop. Sorry, we brought the parish councillors in, and that is for specific rural focus. The part of the action plan, as I mentioned when we talked about the workshop that we ran, and the next community safety partnership meeting will include that element of what do the parish councils want around in terms of rural crime. We haven't actually completed any of the actions because we want to work with the parish councils in determining what we need to do in those rural areas. So we are addressing it, but I'll definitely take on board your feedback that the ward councillors that are linked to the parish councils need to be considered within that as well.
Yeah, can we make a note of that? Yeah, sure.
A lot of the problems are not, the parish council are not aware of. The ward councillors get the flack. I get emails, I get people ringing me up saying, oh, I mean, I don't even live in Bottisford, I live 1.5 miles away, but I get people ringing me up complaining about youth problems. You go to a parish council meeting and you talk to them about it and they say, oh, we're not aware of that. They all live in the village. People come to Don Pritchett and myself.
Councillor, if
Because
you're
I think what we'll do is ask Michelle to lead on this and get the officers to make sure ward councillors are involved from the very start. That's the way forward. Yes, David.
I was just going to say, obviously, if you've got constituents emailing yourself with these complaints, I'd be grateful if you could forward them on to the community safety team so we can have a look at it. And then potentially we try and put some resource and just trying to find out who these young people are and go and speak with them. And then exactly try and find out what the issues are with them. And maybe, you know, we can find some sort of middle ground and work from there, and that'll be a way forward.
I don't want to hog this, but we do have a lot of problems at Bottisford because we've got a community school, a secondary school that's very, very popular. It takes pupils in now from Nottinghamshire, including Newark, and primarily from Grantham. They come in the bus loads, they come on the train. They come back at night or they don't go home, they stop in the village. And so there is a problem. I mean, we've spoken to the inspector about it only a few weeks ago, didn't we? But there is a problem here. And I mean, I'm not one for throwing money at things and thinking money will cure things. But the thing is, it's growing and growing and growing, and there's no light at the end of the tunnel as I see it, because they need something constructive. They don't want to necessarily go to a youth club. They'd like, when the school was functioning properly, it had what they called the old farm buildings, because they used to rear calves and things at the school years ago. And they used to have engines and take motorbikes to pieces and that sort of thing. Lads like that because it's constructive and they're doing something. But there's nothing now. They just wander around. I feel sorry for them, quite frankly. What they do concerns me, but I still feel sorry for them because there's nothing constructive for them to do. And as I say, they're not hard up. They've always got money in their pockets because they're coming from basically middle-class children living in £400,000 houses.
We'll just sum up on that then, Councillor Chandler with Michelle.
Yeah, so I think in terms of summing up, absolutely take your point about engaging ward councillors. I know that's something that's really important, and we can make sure as we move forward, we really take that that forward and on board. And I'm thinking also actually in terms of engaging with, we talked about Amy, and it's emerging, it's new, we can shape it, and we can, you know, really actively make sure that we're hearing young people's voices within that. And actually rural is really important to feature within that as well. So leave that with us, Councillor Chandler, to look at how those things can fit and feature, but we absolutely hear your comments, and thank you for your feedback.
I think the thing is, Michelle, is that this matter's been raised months and months ago, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of progress. So I'll look forward to hearing some progress over the next 3 or 4 months. Thank you. Councillor Atherton.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions. One is for the Police Commission Inspector. Has shoplifting gone up over the last couple of months? Has it increased at any stage? Also, the other one is, say, about reporting. I'm the business manager also at Storehouse. I probably go once a week, if not every other week, to the police station and report a certain person threatening and violent behaviour, making threats to the council here, the police, general public, and sometimes towards the members of staff and visitors at Storehouse. Nothing is ever written down properly. Once something was written down. I've gone in, I took a knife off him while he was in Storehouse and took it to the police and said, I've taken this off him. All I got told is put it in a box. Yes, we know about it, but nothing further than that is get done. He's becoming more and more erratic, this person, and I feel like I'm constantly going in to report about it, but nothing seems to be getting done about it. And the other one is about domestic abuse. Are we rehoming them in Melton, or if it happens in Melton, are we moving them away from Melton? Because if they're staying in Melton, the person that's caused the abuse obviously will have an idea where they live. And that's my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor, for that. Firstly, in relation to your first question around theft and an increase, we're not seeing an increase in theft from stores around the town centre or the villages. What we are seeing is some very, very low level petty thefts by some of the young population who are going in and just you know, taking chocolate bars and bits and pieces like that, which aren't really getting reported to us, because for the stores to ring that in or to do it online, that they're just not really doing it. They'll perhaps see the PCSO or the beat officer and mention it to them, but we're sort of saying, look, you know, we need to know the whole picture of what's going on. The other thing that I've been speaking to Melton Bid quite a bit about is that we need to really invigorate our smart scheme that we had in the town centre. I think we need to look at that as a whole group to make sure that people feel confident in reporting. People, you know, are letting us know what's going on in the shops, because I feel that there's a lot of under-reporting going on. In relation to the person that you're referring to, perhaps have a little conversation with you after the meeting, just so I know who you're referring to. I've got a feeling I do know who you're referring to. If you're coming into the front desk, it may well be that they are jotting it down and putting it on our intelligence system. But yeah, I'd just be confident if I have a conversation so I know who we're talking about. I can go back and check if that's okay. Okay, thank you.
Ask the police inspector about to expand a bit on rural crime. There's 5 members here represent the town and 5 represent the villages. We are getting an increase in rural crime. I'm sure other members would say that. You said you were going to just talk a little bit more about it. What sort of the numbers are we looking at?
So what we're doing with rural crime, as I say, every beat in Melton has the dedicated neighbourhood team on there, which is PCSO and also a police officer. And that's the same across all the rural beats and also the town beats. Obviously, if they highlight to me for the Monday morning meeting that they're seeing an increase in crime on their beats on the rural locations, then I will make sure that the resources are pushed out into those areas for that visibility and reassurance. We're constantly doing engagement out on the rural beats. We don't get a great take up, if I'm honest, of people coming to any sort of beat surgeries that we try and run. So now we are going into the rural communities, onto the farms, trying to engage directly with people to say, look, how can we help you? The problem that we do find is when we go to some of these rural locations, when we go to them, you know, keys are left in cars, properties are left open, CCTV is in place but not working, and so that part of engagement that we're doing now is around, let's try and make some prevention measures, you know, with that community. Like I said, I've got a rural crime officer who is part of a bigger team within Leicestershire. So if he says to me, you know, boss, we're seeing an increase in this, I think we could do with some further support, we can pull them over and they will come over and help us. Rural crime is a massive banner, let's say. So people say, you're not doing anything rural crime. Well, we've got rural beats where we focus a lot of work around antisocial behaviour, drugs, you know, if there's burglaries. But rural crime isn't just because it's a rural location. Rural crime is when we are targeting, say, the farms, the farm machinery's going, you know, it's the hare coursing, it's offences in relation to hunting. It is a massive, massive banner. So when people say rural crime, you know, we've got a rural location and then we've got rural crime. But it's a massive focus for us because of the location that we police.
When they tend to need police assistance, is there a local number they can ring, or they rang the headquarters at Enderby, and there didn't seem a lot of interest in getting out there and then?
So in relation to that, this question comes up all the time, and I feel the frustrations that sometimes people have through 101. You know, if it is a grade 1 response that is required, then it is 999 without a shadow of a doubt. If it's 101, there are other ways of getting hold of people. You get hold of your local beat team. They will provide a mobile number if they are on duty, or you can leave a message to them on their voicemail. There are email systems, there's reporting online. And also, I know a lot of the rural community are now part of a WhatsApp group with the rural crime officer and some of their rural crime teams. And although, you know, my officers can't be on duty 24/7 for some of those locations, that WhatsApp is a very good way of getting messages, but it isn't like your first response reporting. But there are more ways now of getting hold of police officers than there ever have been before.
Councillor Chubb, may I just come
Yes,
to
sure.
Rachel to pick up the question around domestic abuse risk management that Councillor Atherton asked? Rachel, is that okay?
In terms of people who are approaching domestic abuse and where they will be accommodated, so what the focus is identifying people who are at risk or suffering domestic abuse and identifying the risk factors associated with that. So sometimes it might be that they want to stay within Melton if they've got kids at a school or they've got a job. To move them into another area, the person may feel they're at more risk of harm if they move into another area. If somebody stays in their property, it might be they've got good neighbours. The neighbours will know patterns of behaviour, so the neighbours can be a good security factor for them. And what we would do then is link in with other support agencies to look at things like taking restraining orders out, other harassment orders to stop the perpetrator going back to the property. We'd also look at measures such as put in extra locks on the property if needed to, lighting, other security measures to make the person feel safe in their home. If they wanted to move, we would take their lead on where they wanted to move. We're not going to say you have to leave Melton because we don't think it's safe. If it was such a case where we immediately thought, where we thought that person was at risk of serious harm, i.e. death, we could tell that person that that's what we thought through our professional opinion. But if that person still wanted to stay, we'd have to put the safeguards in place and link in with that. What we're trying to do is make sure that all the frontline officers, so all housing options officers, tenancy services officers, and also community safety officers are trained to identify it, so that if they are going into a property or are dealing with somebody, whether it be a tenant or a resident, that we have the skills and are equipped to be able to deal with that there and then.
Councillor Evans.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I always shouldn't feel guilty about this, but let's be honest, you're right. And I know it must be very hard for you, Inspector, because I'm sure time and time again you get the saying, oh, you don't know how lucky you are where you are, because compared to Leicester and the rest of Leicestershire, Melton is easy. And it annoys me when that happens, because if you're a victim of a crime, it doesn't matter whether you're in Barkston where I am or whether you're in Leicester, it still is painful, difficult to deal with, and that crime is just as important to that individual as it wherever they live. So it does annoy me when people say that, because it's important. I'd like to put on record that I think I am incredibly grateful to all these officers. Although Michelle has a hard job, and I keep telling she does, you have an even tougher job, because all of your clients quite often are difficult and not easy to deal with. And I admire the way you must sit day and day and go through one difficult customer after another and try and resolve it. And there are no easy answers to this. If there are easy answers, we wouldn't have East Leicester happening as it did just then. The one thing I did notice, and I was told when I became a councillor, is very important, is early intervention. If you can do it, then save it spreading, because it's like a virus can be. We've been through this virus already, and it feels sometimes like a virus, and I'm sure East Leicester was like that. It started from nothing, and before you knew it, it was out of control. And I know someone who lives there, and he said it just happened suddenly, and it was scary as hell. He said he'd never been so scared in the whole of his life. And he's been around a lot of Europe and Britain. And he said it just culminated and felt completely out of control. Having said that, I'll go back to where I was before, which is the one thing I don't see in any of these documents is about schools and the intervention, because it used to be the thrust when my son was at school, primary school, secondary school, the police were there all the while talking to the children, talking about drugs, which, let's be honest, there's a fair relationship between drug and crime. It's not 100%, but there's an interlink there. And that seems to have faded to me. I spoke to a teacher and they said they don't see so often that intervention in school as they used to. And I think it's an important area that I don't see in any of these documents. Now, you may be doing it, but it used to be up in front. It was 10, 20 years ago, I was told was the way, get them young, make certain they go on the right path, and don't let them wander. And now that seems to have faded. Was that a mood that's changed and we've now moved to something else? Sorry.
Can I just come in about the schools? I know probably COVID's hampered some of that somewhat, obviously for obvious reasons, but I know community safety are looking to reignite our school engagement. I know Amelia has spoken to me fairly recently about picking that back up, so I'm confident moving forward that we will be doing a lot more of that in the future. I really do think that COVID probably played a major part in that. Obviously, a lot of students working from home, obviously, but that is something we will be doing moving forward, most definitely, alongside the police, I'm sure.
Yeah, if I can just come in on that. So early intervention, absolutely key. And part of our youth engagement is all around schools. And I think if you spoke to schools within sort of the Melton borough, you would get a real good sense that actually the joint work that goes on within schools is pretty phenomenal. Certainly with the antisocial behaviour that we had from October through till sort of March, the schools were part of that Melton Matters meeting, and the information sharing was one of the best I've ever seen. Leicestershire Police have a school liaison officer who engages with all the schools and puts out what our education offer is for that year. So knife crime, drugs inputs, CSE, and whatever they want to sign up for, we will deliver those inputs. I have recently recruited a youth engagement officer who is a PCSO, who's been pulled away from doing more PCSO work and just does youth engagement. So she is constantly within the schools. We promote the community portal within the schools so that they can report intelligence direct through to the police without having to sort of ring it through or make contact. So I'm pretty confident in saying that the information sharing, the engagement and the collaborative work that goes on with Melton schools is one of the best that I've ever probably witnessed within my service. And I'm coming up for 28 years within Leicestershire Police. So I've worked on a lot of neighbourhood areas, and I've seen some schools not engaging as well as they do here. So that's just a bit of reassurance for you. And certainly within the action plan that we're working on for the Community Safety Partnership, that will be reflected in it.
Want to come in on that, please?
Yeah, just to add to all of that as well, I know David's mentioned that we're going to be doing a lot more work, but it's probably been remiss of us that we have done actually some events in schools through the Prevent agenda that we haven't captured. The other comment that I want to make is what you said, Councillor, around early intervention. And early intervention, I think sometimes the challenge with that is you cannot always measure tangible outcomes, because if you're intervening early, you're preventing things that are not always easy to sort of say, because you've not reduced something, you've actually prevented it. But one of the things that this council does well is that early intervention through teams like the Community Support Hub, that does all the case management, and all of that is based around, it may not have the community safety label, but that's what we talked about within our community safety offer. And within that community safety offer, we've talked about empowering, connecting, enabling communities. And then the other bit was the healthy and active communities and role that health and sports and activity plays in prevention and mental health as well. So whilst we probably haven't talked about it in that bit of detail, there is a lot of early intervention work that goes on in Melton, which comparatively, when you look at other councils, there isn't that level. And it is obviously, it's the council here that have elected to invest in those kind of services.
Councillor Wilkinson, then Councillor Holmes.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, I think Amelia's work has been great on Fairmead with the Football League. It's been really good. It's gone down really, really well. The feedback I've had from people on the estate is that it's been a really good thing, and things are starting to change there now. And it's from where it was, 5-6 years ago. It's a very different estate to how it was. So just want to give Amelia that feedback. I know, Michelle, we need to discuss a case, but more generally, what support is the council and the police giving to people who, experience antisocial behaviour, but they're not council tenants, they're at the end of their tether, they feel like they're isolated, they're not getting any support from anyone. What are we doing more generally to support those people?
Yeah, I might hand to David and Lindsay on this, because there are cases are difficult and people's lives are complex, and sometimes, you know, that can be difficult. So there is that issue around expectation management, but it's also really important that we're not missing something, that we are genuinely helping people, whether that's the way in which they're perceiving a situation or experiencing a situation. So, I mean, David, can I come to you? Because I know that, yeah, you'll sort of pick up some of these tricky cases and maybe talk through that collaboration and give that reassurance of the fact that we are listening.
Yeah, so obviously there is an online reporting system that members of the public can go and report antisocial behaviour to us from, and then that's how we usually pick up our caseload. Sometimes we get stopped in the street. Sometimes when we're doing our door knocks, people come and speak to us and tell us, you know, this is happening, or it comes through a direct email or something of that nature. So I suppose in regards to addressing somebody's ASB concerns or issues that they're having, at first, we really need to be made aware of it. And they need to come forward and tell us the issues that they're having, so we can try and support them in a way that's going to be meaningful to them and try and get a positive resolution on that. We do work very closely with the police, and we have a regular meeting every month to discuss our obviously priority cases and how we can work up. And the officers have a very good relationship between our officers and the police officers, and housing as well. But for them private homeowners or privately rented, we do deal with them as well. So it's not just housing stock. We do deal with all antisocial behaviour within the community, and like I say, we need the information from them. So if they tell us something is happening that potentially requires a referral from a different agency, we can support them within that. I think Rachel touched on about the referrals for domestic abuse and how our officers are going to be trained to look for signs of that. So there's elements of that as well. We can look to refer them, but it is basically, we need to know about it, so they need to come forward to us. And if you've got anybody that is coming to you, please point them in our direction so we can help support them. We might not be able to solve all the problems straight away, but we'll obviously keep them informed. We'll try and respond to them as best we can. We do triage each case, so you know, if it's coming in very high, and we try and respond to it as soon as possible, really. So yeah, I think it is literally building that communication, and officers will remain in touch with them, and we'll build them bridges with the police to work collaboratively.
I think if I could just build on that point as well, I think the other thing is sometimes the solution to helping people to feel better about the experience that they're having might not sit with the council or even with the police. And so again, any individual cases we will discuss outside of this meeting, but it might be that's where our adults at risk panel comes in really useful, because there are other agencies around the table that can build those trusted relationships and can really help to address some of those issues. But some of these issues are really complex and really complicated, and they can't be resolved overnight. But we really do rely on those relationships that we can build to understand what's happening. But Lindsay, was there anything you wanted to add?
What I can add is that certainly if it is reported to the police, we would obviously make the assessment as the best way to deal with it. Are there any criminal offences? Is there harassment, or is it literally an antisocial case management system that we need to record it on? We would then we would deal with it exactly the same as we would if it was a Melton Borough Council tenant, because we would take the incremental approach against them, or we would look at mediation and support depending on what the actual allegation was. Obviously, I'd make sure that community safety were aware. I wouldn't obviously go to the housing officer because it wouldn't be relevant to them, but we would still work in collaboration to deal with the antisocial behaviour. Just because it's not a Melton Borough Council sort of tenant, we still share that information, don't we? And we would still look to deal with it. And it may well be that David has got more connections with different sort of mediation or different sort of powers in the toolbox that we can utilise rather than us. So it certainly isn't a case of, oh, you know, you're not a tenant of Melton Borough Council, so you know we can't deal with it. That doesn't happen.
Thank you. That's perfect. A question for Lindsay, really. That's hard.
Okay, so one of the first things that obviously the crime commissioner has made sure that is that there is a neighbourhood officer on every beat out in the sort of counties, and a police community support officer, which there is in place at Melton. Obviously, he was responsible with others in building the rural crime team for Leicestershire, and
that team, as I've said, they're not based at Melton. One of them is, but if I need them, I can pull their resources and their expertise and their knowledge, and they have access to vehicles that I don't have access to at the minute. So, you know, if I was to see a spree of hare coursing, I could ask them to come over, and they've got access to vehicles that can go across, you know, the terrain that they would need to. I've got one at Melton that can do that, but they've got other facilities. So he's definitely increased that. Not really relevant to Melton, more to Rutland. Obviously, he's been responsible for opening the front inquiry office in Rutland, which has had a big impact that side. We've still got the front office this side, so you know, people can come in there. I've not had an increase in officers, but I just think the emphasis is around the rural crime team and the support that they'll provide, to be fair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Right, nothing to do with you asked about other things, and one of those is fantastic people who are wombles, and there's a lady from Eton, and she does all round my area up to Eastwall and all around, and so she has her pink bags, and she's always doing it. And when does it get collected? Sometimes it takes 3 or 4 weeks. And by that time, some people have actually split the bags and they're thrown all over the place. Now, there was quite frightening, I thought. There was a lady with a very small child wombling up the Waltham Road the other day. That's still there. And somebody has split a bag and it's gone all over the place again. So can you please get it picked up straight away, please?
I will take that away, Councillor Holmes. I speak with the environmental maintenance team and BIFA. So thank you for the feedback.
That's not the finish. You did, well, no, well, everybody else has gone on a bit, so I don't see why I can't. Right, you did mention about hunting, didn't you? You mentioned that, well, I think the beaver, I don't know about the corn, but I think the beaver try and look after their own problems, don't they? But very often when it's around me, I don't hunt anymore. But when there are generally 1 or 2 police cars about, and very, very, very rarely is there any problem. And I would have thought that they would have been better engaged in other places. That I don't know what you think about that.
I think in relation to that is the visible presence is there to support the whole rural crime aspect, to be fair. It's not just to police the hunt. So the officers that are out and about are probably, you know, out in the rural locations and are keeping an eye on what's going on, making sure that, you know, we're not having any issues with their hunt saboteurs or the hunt. They don't, you know, they're very independent to it. But whilst they're out there, they're patrolling the rural locations as well. So to be fair, I'm quite happy when they come over and support that, because it's extra visibility for the police in the rural locations.
Finally, last night I was at an advisory meeting of Melton Young Farmers. I do know that other people have problems around with young people. We actually haven't had as many young people in Melton Young Farmers for a very long time. We now have 90. And there are 3 girls who have been looking after, some are 10 years old, 10 years to 14, some are. So we have to split the clubs, because obviously others don't really want to play with. Well, they're not the same meetings anyway. But when we do find, unfortunately, that some of the parents just want to drop the children off and leave them, and it is quite difficult. But the you know, the girls at the chair and the chairs and the secretaries and people have really tried hard to look after these young people. And I think it's credit to them. Now, I don't see in your, now then, what is it called? Amy, do you actually engage with people from clubs like the Young Farmers Club, like the Scouts and Brownies? Do you engage with them as well? I know you don't with Mount Young Farmers, but I don't know whether you do, because it would be helpful really, because they do know things. Plus the fact we have a meeting every other week at Scorford Village Hall, and the police, anybody would be, we're delighted to see you from 7 till 8:30, 8:45 on a Tuesday evening.
I'll respond to you, Elaine.
Only on the point of Amy, we are in very early days, and we have a meeting which, maddeningly from my point of view, clashes with the next council meeting in October, so I'm not going to be able to go, but that is a point. One of the things I want them to be able to do is get a directory of some sort which will have the young farmers clubs in it and who to contact, because it obviously is very difficult. And it's what we're finding really with, I mean, I know, but I'm hopeless because I don't do social media, but we are finding it very hard to communicate with people. Fine if they are on social media, we've got facilities to do that, but people no longer read the Melton Times. We were told at the last Amy meeting that you give them a leaflet, it's in the waste basket before they've left for school. And it is one of those early on things, is we've got to really just work out how we must communicate, not just with them, but with everybody else. And I'm hoping that before too many meetings, we will have this directory of some sort up. And hopefully the Young Farmers, which is an amazing organization, will be one of the things that people can do, and we'll serve them. So we will see. But thank you. Is there anything else?
Councillor Posner.
Right, I was very interested in and I'm pleased you do it, that somebody that's due to come out of prison that has not got a house, then you look at rehousing them. How do we do it, being as we've not got a lot of houses that are ours? Do we go into private renting, and do we make sure that we don't put them back in the middle of somewhere where they've probably just left, and that's how they learn to break the law?
Rachel, would you like to respond to that? Thank you.
We've got the prison leavers protocol in place, which means that we have, I forget the name of the agency, so apologies for that. We have a contact within the prison that is able to give, make the assessment, see what the issue is, if we can keep a tenancy, or if they are going to be homeless on release. What we will also look to do is look to identify any risk measures. So if they are at risk of, if we've got mental health issues, or if they are extremely vulnerable and maybe at risk of cuckooing, we would aim not to put them back in a similar place. So we would be looking at private rented, and we'd also be looking at other supported accommodation. We really struggle in Melton for that particular, for supported accommodation for any vulnerable group, because we just don't have that much of it. So what we try to do is, unfortunately, we do have to go out of area, but with the aim that they would still remain a priority if they're eligible for the housing register. Not everybody who is a prison leaver is a priority, so we can't guarantee that every prison leaver will get accommodation. What we can guarantee is that we will do our level best to get them accommodation, and if we haven't, it's because there's either none available or the person has been willing to engage. So we will do everything we can, but we can only do what we can do and what we work with, and it's my role has been, and moving forward, to try and increase those options for people that maybe haven't got the funding and the options available to them that they should have.
Okay, thank you for that. The other thing is a comment, really. I've been contacted within a week with 2 people both female, but they've both got different issues. And I just feel, I mean, I have passed them on, so I know they're going to be dealt with, but I just feel that if we as a council and you as the police, because one of the problems is they've got these issues, like one lady whose son has been attacked, they've got he's broken his restraining order 3 times. She says, and nothing's happening. You know, she said, what do I have to do to get someone to do something? And they don't understand the court system. They don't understand how long it takes somebody to go to court. But I just do think sometimes these people that we know that have got issues and we've not actually solved it for them, that they just need somebody to occasionally keep in touch with them and just let them know what's happening. Because in both these cases, if somebody had kept in touch with them, they wouldn't have come to me. Not that I object to them coming to me, but they wouldn't have come to me and I wouldn't have had to have passed it on and then get something done about it, because they just feel that nobody cares. And I know we're all busy, but it only takes a couple of minutes just to send somebody an email or pick a phone up and say, we know nothing's happened yet, but we are expecting. You know, it's just that people need, I believe.
Yeah, Councillor Posset, I know you sent one of those cases to me today, and Rachel and I have had a brief discussion about that. We absolutely recognise that as an issue, as something that, you know, that little bit of extra time and that communication can make a big difference. And when people are experiencing some of the complexities and issues that they present to us with, it's stressful. It's a stressful lifestyle to be leading, isn't it? And we absolutely recognise that. So I have confidence in Rachel's leadership of the team to really support and focus on that. And the feedback that you've given us today is really helpful, so I really appreciate you sending that on.
Councillor Evans. Sorry to wait you. No, I was just dreaming. Yeah, you're right. I just wanted to clarify on the comment about fox hunting and all the rest of it. It is not a waste of time for the police to be involved there. It wasn't that long ago, and I'm sure you remember it, Stavern, serious assault on between, which ended very badly for the person who was abused. And I've seen the hostility when these things happen, and I understand which side of fox hunting you are, but there are laws. The people who do the hunting have to obey them, just, you know, just as anybody else has to obey them. And it is thank you for turning up every now and again to make certain when they're hunting legally, and when there are the saboteurs or whatever they're called nowadays there. Some of them, I've seen them, they put face masks on and gosh knows what, intimidating, especially when you're walking down a footpath and come against them. It's helpful to know every now and again that the police are there and they're controlling this, because there is huge aggression between the two camps, which needs to be calmed down and resolved. Thank you very much. I think the meeting appears to be coming to an end. Can I thank the Inspector, Lindsay, for a comprehensive report, and all the officers for attending, many of them first time in scrutiny. Maybe we'll see you again in the future. Thanks to the portfolio holder, and thank you also to the fellow councillors, everyone attending tonight. So thank you very much. And the recommendation will go to the Cabinet. We'll take note of all your comments and they'll be considered by the Cabinet in the next week or two. So thank you very much, and we'll close the meeting at 8:02. Thank you.